And
Oh,
we're
ladies and
live.
gentlemen. All right. How's everybody doing tonight? We doing good?
It'd be
Yes,
doing
I'm
better if I
excited.
muted my tabs like a pro. Okay, we're good now.
So you had me in like delayed echo stereo is what I'm
hmm
hearing.
He's like, "How's it going? How's it going?"
Welcome, 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 welcome. All right. So last week we did a riveting resume conversation. So how to
Yes.
build resumes in IT. It was clear to us that it was gonna be a two-parter. So luckily we planned ahead this time. So here we are with part two. Lee Markham, the DBA, will be leading that. Also, as his co-hosts, you have O'Grady, the software engineer, Anthony Fortner, that's me, I'm the data engineer, and unless you guys have something you want to talk about beforehand, we can just go ahead and kick it off. I will say that we're sorry that we're running a little bit late. My computer, which is still updating, needed a restart before the show, and Windows in all its glory is now forcing me to do a lot of updates. So, well, the show must go on. Anyway,
Spirit did mention. Spirit called out that you have a new camera,
yeah,
kind of.
I had to make do, kind of. I had to make do because the PC went out. So,
Hey, it works.
feedback's appreciated. Bring it, people. Bring it.
This is proof that Discord runs pretty well on a mobile. So
Yeah.
looking good.
Yeah, looks good. All right,
So yeah,
So
so
Lee.
I'm just gonna do a brief recap of last week's talk, and then I'm actually gonna show a mostly real resume, and we can pick it apart. I promise, even though you're gonna see whose resume it is, it's totally cool. So last week we talked mostly about the format and style of the resume and what should go on it, what shouldn't go on it, and that kind of thing. And starting from the top down, we talked about having some kind of contact information. Obviously, you need your first and last name. We said partial address because nobody probably in the resume really needs to see your actual house and street. And we
yeah.
even said probably not even the zip code because all of that stuff could be used to either locate you or profile you in some way, potentially.
hmm
So, name and partial address. We talked about having a cell phone number on there. LinkedIn. So, your link to your LinkedIn, Twitter handle, website or blog post if you have, or website or blog if you have that. I
Professional
have something.
Twitter.
What's that?
Professional Twitter.
Professional, yes. All of these things
Yes.
need to be professional. So, yeah, thank you for reminding me that. Yeah.
Just
So,
recapping for
so
anybody that may not have seen the first one, make sure they know that if you have a Twitter, don't just throw it on there. Professional accounts only.
exactly, and that goes for your email address. Don't use the cute thing you created when you were 12 years old. Use a real professional email. Just probably your name at gmail.com or something like that.
Unicorn
Um,
farts 56 at
Probably
Yahoo.
not.
No.
Come on, now everyone knows my email. It's just out there now. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
Oh
sure
my
that's someone's
gosh.
email and they'll be like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, right.
Um, and then I had something on here called Sessionize, or on one version of it I do, and we'll talk about what Sessionize is when we look at the email or when we look at the resume. Um, yeah, so that's the top part. That's your contact information and a little bit of professional information if people want to look you up to see what you're about. Then you would go into a professional summary, usually, which is just some kind of succinct synopsis of who you are as a professional. And then followed by a work history. And in that work history, typically you would have formatting so that people can easily see who you were working for and what the role was and the dates. And then beyond that, you have like an educational history. And on that, we talked a little bit about whether you want to include things like your graduation dates because those can be used to figure out how old you are.
Yep.
And you want to try to steer clear of that, generally speaking. Then we talked a little bit about having another section below that called professional training. So, for example, if you took a class through some third party,
Mhm.
a third party training site, and you particularly maybe if you got some sort of certificate or whatever with that, then you can list that in professional training. If
Mhm.
you actually have a professional certification from something like from Microsoft or CompTIA or that sort of thing, then maybe a separate certification section where those certifications would be listed. So that's in general kind of the formatting that we talked about last week, along with some things about the length of the resume, what kind of fonts and styles to use. You don't have to get overly flowery and pretty.
No Comic Sans.
Yeah, no Comic Sans or wingdings or crazy things that can't even be read.
Yeah,
So yeah, any follow-up comments, questions, or concerns about that?
I think so. I think we covered a lot of
No,
it
I
last
don't.
week. Our
Yeah, I
concerns.
mean, I think we would, education should be on there. We'll dodge the dates. I definitely think you should put certifications on there. Anything you did above and beyond that relates to your skill level, talk about it. Unless I just missed it, I don't think you mentioned like volunteering and extracurricular stuff, but like
Mm.
that's always going to be on there, especially if
Yes.
you're junior.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean leave it off if you're senior, but I think we did touch on last time things that you can add to it if you're on the junior side that will
Mhm.
help beef it up. That's not fluff. If
Yeah.
you're running the IT part of a local nonprofit, that's real work,
yeah.
and that also means that they relied on you, and that's what we need usually in IT, someone we can rely on. So it's the only thing I'd add.
But yeah, a lot of
Yeah, and
times.
go ahead.
I was gonna say a lot of times IT volunteer opportunities, like you're mentioning, um, actually are a lot harder than some stuff we do at a job because you don't know what
You
you're
don't have a budget.
starting with. You don't have a budget. They're like, do this, and you're like, I'm not that kind of IT, but I'm volunteering, so sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
love to see that on resumes.
That could be its own show. We should mark that down. Actually,
For
continue. Sorry,
things that you can volunteer for IT wise, or what do you mean?
just conversations about IT, volunteering in IT, some of the struggles.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
the fact that you
I
can't
like
just
it.
throw money at a problem. All right, sorry, not
Yeah,
to
for
derail.
sure. That's all right. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can look at a mostly real resume and talk about what we like, what we don't like, what we would do differently, and that sort of thing. So let me get that ready.
I'm gonna do my best to make this a smooth transition. So let's see how it goes. Don't at me. That was pretty smooth, actually.
All right,
How is
there we
that? So
go.
how does this look
Go team.
on Twitch for anybody viewing? Um, my concern is that can look a little small still, so I may be able to bump it up, but you may have to zoom in for
Let us
Twitch.
know in chat. Give us feedback.
Yeah, wondering if I can do anything on my side to make it bigger.
Can you control mouse wheel?
There we go.
Nice.
There you go.
Okay, that better.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
that's better.
So, I guess it spoils are out now. This is going to be my resume. So, at the top, it has got my name, city, and state. Again, that's all you really need. Particularly, we talked, I think, last week, if you're trying to find a job remote, maybe you don't even have city and state on there. I don't know. I mean, it just depends on what you're going after. And then cell phone, some sort of email, Of course, I've changed all of that to protect the guilty.
I was gonna say guilty or innocent. I don't know, one or the other.
And then I have my LinkedIn there, and then this is leemarkham.com is my website / blog. I have my Twitter handle on here. I mentioned Sessionize. It's not on this version of the resume because this is a 2-page resume. And I talked last week about the fact that I had a 3-page resume, and we can talk about what's different here when we get to that part. But if I put Sessionize on here, then it bumps it into a 3rd page in kind of a weird way, so I left it off. But so Sessionize is for presenters and speakers. So you build a profile of sessions that you have built and are ready to present to other people and to groups of folks. You can go to conferences and SQL, what we know in this group is a weekend conference called SQL Saturday, where there are speakers from all over who either, well, in the before days, you would all gather in a building and rotate rooms and go see different presentations about SQL Server and SQL development and that kind of stuff. Now we're starting to get back to some of that, but most of it's still virtual. But anyway, so Sessionize is for things like that, where you're going to be in a professional, some kind of professional or semi-professional speaking circuit. So then I have professional summary. Now I do note on here, I don't have summary. So, right here, I probably could put summary, I don't know, or professional summary, but I don't have that. It is kind of an abrupt transition from, the header contact information right into that. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I usually have my summary a similar way, where it's just right underneath my header. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I would necessarily put summary or have a title on it. I think it's implied.
Okay.
I mean, that'd be my opinion.
I think I'm the same way. Just I don't need to put summary up. I just have the summary there. But those of you who have an eye for design, camera down. If you have an eye for design, then you go with what you think looks good. But I don't think you need to say summary. I think they know what it is.
I thought you just Will Smithed it, like, for those of an eye for design, boom, and just knocked your camera off. So I didn't know what was going on.
New setup.
So we talked a little bit about what goes in the summary. Again, I just said earlier that it should be some sort of succinct synopsis of who you are as a professional. So I see that someone has said that this is a little bit blurry. I don't know if that's still the case or not. I'll just kind of read part of it so you kind of get a sense of what I put in my summary.
So you might be able to zoom in a little more. Can you make your white all the way to the edge? There you go. I know that seems really big for sharing, but on stream it looks a lot better, more readable.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So cool. I don't necessarily have to read it, but I just said I was going to, so I'm going to now. So I've got, for my summary, it's SQL Server Database Administrator with experience installing and configuring SQL Server 2005 through 2019, performance tuning, optimization, and monitoring, as well as database design and migrations. I design and support high availability and disaster recovery solutions for SQL Server. I also have 9 years of experience managing direct reports. The last sentence feels a little bit like odd, maybe, but we talked about it last week, I think, when we were talking about summaries. And part of that is in there because if I'm interested in or I'm applying to something that could move me toward management, I want them to see that I have management experience. So that they're aware of that. So those sentences pretty well summarize me as an IT professional, do I have skills that aren't listed on there? Well, of course, but I can't list everything. Um,
Which is
there
where you want to
was
get to in your life. When you can't list all the skills you have. That's a humble brag
yeah,
right there.
sure.
I
That's
wish I could make this resume. I just can't fit everything I'm good at on it.
My skills just don't fit on 3 pages.
oh
I
my
maxed out
gosh,
my skill
guys.
points.
Um,
Right.
that brings up a point though about formatting, and some research that I had come across indicated that you should have a skills section. And I don't really, I mean, you might consider this use of like a skills section,
Yeah.
kind of, but to me, your skills could also just be sprinkled into the resume.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's, what do you guys think
Yeah.
on that?
My thought is that your use of basically is what I would consider a skill section. I feel like it's the same thing. I like to have a skill section, and as you mentioned before, the big use for that is when people looking for bullet points.
Mhm.
Here's the bullet points. Here's the stuff you're looking for. Details below, right? And like you mentioned, Jira and Mimic Share, and since you're on SolarWinds and VMware, like those important things people will know.
Yeah.
In your case, what kind of DBA are you? Are you just purely SQL Server? Do you understand storage? Do you understand virtual machines? VMware is on there. Do you
Mhm.
deal with the, tertiary stuff, the stuff on the side? Like Mimikshare is not a SQL Server product, right? It's not a Microsoft product.
Mhm.
But if they are looking for somebody who understands a certain type of product and they know what Mimikshare is, it'll be good for them to see that bullet point
Yeah.
without going to page 3 and finding out that how you used that. Not esoteric's the wrong word, but that not every DBA knows what Mimikshare is, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point about kind of what's on here and what's not. So you don't see, you know, MySQL
Yeah.
or MongoDB or DynamoDB or any of the NoSQL stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just what I've worked with. But despite that, you'd be surprised at, or maybe the two of you wouldn't, but I'm still surprised at how many people contact me about jobs that require experience for all kinds of NoSQL things or even
Mhm.
Oracle. I'm like, do you see that on my resume somewhere? Because I don't.
Like that. They're like, well, we're kind of
yeah.
implying it
Oh,
because you've done everything else. But no, you bring up a good
well,
point
you've
though.
messed with database, so
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
But yeah, you bring up a good point about not putting certain things on there. So like I don't see Microsoft Office on there. If I did, I would have been like, this is filler based on the position you're trying to apply for.
Yeah.
That being said, know the position you're applying for because as a entry level, you might have Microsoft Office, Microsoft Excel, um, different
True.
things that we take for granted as in the IT world of yeah, everybody knows that, but as an intro, you might need to put some of that filler in there just to say, hey, I have enough to get my foot in the door. I'm like, cool, that's what I wanted to see for an entry level position.
Yeah. And I like what Craftsman is saying. So, the skill section is for resume readers, so they don't
Mhm.
have to read the whole thing.
Yep.
And that's a good point. So I think I'm going to change. I mean, I don't know. I had use of. I could change. I could just leave it skills. That's probably more commonly expected.
Yeah.
Um,
And then yeah, that's in this section on mine, I would put things that were more um I don't want to say obscure, but like not as used by everyone else that would target
yeah.
development. Be like, I work
Okay.
in Visual Studios. I know, VS Code. I know Eclipse. Like these different platforms that not
Hmm.
everyone uses, but if that company uses that platform, they're gonna be like, okay, cool, that's what we use. So, it puts
Yeah.
them at our level already.
Also, a lot of this is getting us that interview, but having certain items on there that maybe are conversation starters, or I don't mean something funny, but like something interesting like Dolt, no one's heard of that database, right? Or some other tool that you use that not every insert your title
Yeah.
here, not every software engineer uses, not every
It's like when
DBA
I put
uses. Gives it,
SSMS on my resume. People are like, you deal with that? I'm like, I can. I don't.
that's
Not
actually a
like
good point,
usually,
yeah,
but
because me and Lee might leave ours off. We might not
yeah.
need to say SSMS, right? But you put that on there, and then they're like, "Wait, you actually mess with the SQL thing, right? Oh, cool.
I put
Um,
AS400 on mine. DB2 AS400
Yeah,
because it shows that I can do multiple skill sets outside of my comfort zone. And you're like,
that's good.
you can do this? I'm like, yeah. They just don't expect it.
Yep.
So anything that's not expected by your career, I think should be on there.
if it's valuable, right?
If it's
Yeah,
yeah, don't.
It has to be within the circle of your IT domain and whatnot. Also, I would say we're talking about leaving stuff off. Um, Sometimes you need to strategically leave stuff off too. Like if I was building up a resume, I wouldn't put Access DB on there, even though I have a lot of access knowledge. Right? I don't want someone being like, oh, "Hey,
Did you cut out for everybody or just me?
Yeah, you're cutting out really badly.
Looks like you're roaring though, so it's fine. The lion. Let's stick with that. Okay, we'll pause Anthony's comment, or he'll pause it himself apparently, and then
Yeah,
we
we'll
can
keep going.
continue.
I guess if you want to message him, see if we can
Yeah,
help him out. I'll keep going.
yeah.
So that's the skill section that I have. And we keep moving down. So I have a clearly labeled professional experience section. And here's where some of the formatting comes in that we talked about. So it's really easy for someone when they're trying to scan this to see what sections belong to what.
Mhm.
And you will see this more later. So first employment, meaning my current employer.
Mhm.
So there were some things that I saw about the order in which employment should be listed, and there was
Really?
a couple of different formats. Almost all of them were kind of leaning toward or use the most current employer first, so reverse chronological order as the default. But there were some other formats, just so people are aware. You don't have to do it this way. I just think it's the most common.
I like the reverse chronological as a resume reader. Luckily, I don't have to do that much anymore, but only because a lot of times you're looking for, working gaps or gaps in work, and how long someone was at somewhere, um,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. It's a lot easier to chronologically say, okay, well, he was in here till 2019, then he went to here 2019, like no gap.
Right.
Of
Yeah.
course,
yeah.
we might want to
Am I
talk about
back?
that as well. With yeah,
You're
you're back.
back.
You look good. Um, I don't know if you were going to touch on that as well about gaps in resumes and how they're not always a negative, but um, what's the best way of explaining that or presenting that on a resume?
That's a great question, and we didn't talk about that. I haven't. I mean, I haven't done a ton of research about that. There's anecdotal comments on LinkedIn where people are even recruiters are saying, why wouldn't you expect gaps in employment, especially right now? Because a
Yeah.
lot of people were let go, or they were furloughed and they quit, or that sort of thing, and they're having a hard time getting back into the market. And so, if you saw a gap in the last 2 years, probably not even worry about it because you know what happened or you suspect. And I don't know.
That's
I don't know.
true.
What do you guys think? I don't have a lot of thoughts about gaps.
The problem is I don't understand why it's a problem. So if I was reading someone's like their resume, and I also like reverse chronological. This is their last job. This is what they were just doing or still doing today. This was a job before. Oh, they took 2 years off. There's another job. Like I don't understand why that's a red flag. Like even if you try to make up a horrible story, like they quit the other job, they got burnt out, or they went to rehab or something. I don't care,
Mine's more for
right?
knowledge
They've been
loss.
employed again. What's that?
For loss of knowledge over the gap is my concern. So let's say they go to
Well,
college, they get a new job, and then they work there for a year, then they don't work in IT for 3 years. Now they're applying for an IT job.
so
You
you're
have
not
to.
saying any gap. You're saying
Well,
they
yeah, I
haven't been
mean,
working.
in my
Okay.
yeah, I guess in that scenario there would be just not IT. But let's say they, left an IT job 2 years ago. I'm still concerned that they haven't had a job since they left that job and now. And now I'm not saying that's a you're not getting hired. I'm saying that I would bring that up in an interview saying what have you done since your previous employment to keep up with your IT skills to continue your programming efforts. And if they have an answer of, "Oh, I've been working on my 3D printers and I do a lot of side projects," and give me some feedback about the gap, um, it would never bother me. But that would be my
Yeah.
suggestion: is to always have something presentable, um, if it is a recent gap, that shows that you've been working on your IT skills even through that gap.
So I would say I agree to one point. You should, try to strategize, maybe spend some time staying sharp, be able to say what you're doing. But that still doesn't, that isn't my wavelength, right? Like I still don't really grok that. If I was going to be hiring O'Grady, if I was, well, interviewing O'Grady, and let's say O'Grady stuff happened in your life and you had to stop working for 2 years,
Yep.
that's a huge gap. Let's just say 2 years, you're out. From my point of view, the hypothetical situation, I would still be interested in you 2 years ago, right? Like
Yeah.
your skills don't get, maybe they get rusty, right?
Yeah.
But if you're looking for the job, you probably, hopefully, freshened up a little bit, right? Like I just don't, it, yeah, you get rusty. Maybe you got to practice working in a corporate environment or something. But if like
Yeah.
your kid was sick and you're like, this is more important, I'm spending time with my kid for the next 2 years, by the time you talk to me, by the time you get that interview, you knew you're getting a job. You had every opportunity to freshen up. And I
Yeah.
really feel that by looking at your last job and asking you a couple of questions now, that you can kind of suss out whether or not they forgot what C sharp was.
That's true.
So
That's true.
just to challenge that a little bit. You know,
No,
I know
that's a good
Okay.
point.
there's so many people out there who could take 5 years off and kick a lot more butt than me. So I have trouble believing that like
Yeah.
sitting on a beach for a year because you won the lottery makes you not a good worker anymore.
Good point. Good point.
Good ideas. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I didn't have my chat pulled up for Craftsman was talking. Oh, there was an obscure position on his Craftsman's resume, and he's 5 years later he still gets constant recruiters. Yep.
yeah.
Um, and then he's also saying that like a 5 to 10 year gap. Um, so we didn't bring that up. He said he's more concerned with people that change jobs every 6 months. Would that be a resume stopper, or would that be more of a open discussion of, maybe they're contracting? Is jumping around too much, that bad?
That's tricky. I might have the unpopular opinion on that. Mostly, it depends on the role. Like some
Mm-hmm.
roles, your team needs help and you need a rock star. And if
Yep.
they're in and out in 6 months, but they're hitting the ground running after 2 weeks, maybe that's okay, right? That's fine. Now there are positions where you're like, we need the captain. We need someone to run this team. We need the I don't want to say star player because those kind of environments are usually bad, but
Like a
maybe
team
they can be
leader,
toxic. But
however you want to say it.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a team lead, or we need someone solid. I've lived through that, right? Where you need someone to stick around to understand things and learn things. There's
Yeah.
roles that are like that, and sometimes you do have to look for the people who are like, hypothetically, I've been at two companies, 12 years each, right? Hey, if you treat this person right, they'll stick around.
Yep.
There are roles like that. Is all I'm saying.
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
I think
that's fair.
things like related to management, for example, like if I just have this weird thing where I like stability. And so I
Yeah.
think if I'm hiring like a manager role, for example, and I get a resume where they change management roles every 6 to 12 months, I'd be like, "Mm." I'd
Yeah.
not be excited about that. Um,
Yeah.
because managers are so important to your company, to the employees that they manage, and I wouldn't feel good about bringing someone in who I thought might leave in 6 to 12 months, and then I just have to start over, and the team has
Yeah.
to start over with learning a manager and their style. But I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's fair too.
so in terms of the formatting, I talked a little bit about, I've got professional experience at bold, underline. Same thing here with the employer and the address. And then I kind of go a little smaller here. There's no bold, but I do have an underline. I'm just trying to show the relationship between these three things. So this is the role I had
Mm-hmm.
at this place when I started. As I said earlier, this is my current role.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why, so I only have 4 things on here. I promise you, I do way more than 4 things. Um,
On a
At
but
Tuesday.
once. Yeah.
um, some of it is just I haven't given as much attention to my current resume, to the current job in my resume as the other locations. I haven't been there long enough, and I haven't cared to. Like I'm not. I've only been there a year. I like it, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not suggesting that your current job should only have 4 bullet points.
Yeah, like you said, usually don't build those bullet points while you're in your job. Usually it's when you
Yeah.
start looking, but that might be
Yeah.
good to make
If you
note.
had,
Yeah.
yeah, if you had like 7 really good bullet points right now, Upland would be like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for sure. So that's why that's a little sparse. But to go back to some of the things that we talked about in terms of what goes on the content, is you really should list as many what I'm going to call impact ideas or impact projects
Mm-hmm.
as possible versus just tasks that you're capable of doing. So that's a big part of why this last bullet point is here for Upland Software. Set up Resource Governor, which is a SQL Server feature.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a proof of concept for a SQL Server feature. I'd never used it before, but I'm putting it on here because now I have. If somebody later would be interested in playing around with that feature, or maybe they use Resource Governor extensively at their place, and this
Yep.
is on here, then like, oh, this person has some experience with this feature. So that's why this kind of thing is on here. I have some more of that in this really cool place I worked at. Again, I'm protecting the guilty. So the next job is really cool place. Here's my role, and here's the link that I was in that role. So here's a more like impactful kind of thing. It's not just a task, it's something that I accomplished. Not by myself, of course, but I I did lead the project that caused those things to happen. So implementation and support of 7 always on availability groups, blah, blah, blah. Implementation support of 4 SQL Server failover clusters. There used to be something in here. I'm looking for something specific now. Here. Created a semi-automated process for new SQL Server builds, reducing delivery time by 2 to 3 hours. So
They see
every time we
money
needed,
when a reader looks at that. They say, "Wow, you saved that much money." That's a big point.
yeah, it means developers aren't sitting around waiting. They're
Mhm.
actually getting their machines quicker because of this thing that I was able to put together. And that's what I mean by impactful projects or tasks. Um, show the impact of what you do, not just what you do.
Yeah, so I kind of want to point out something that I think is not on there. Tell me if it is, I'm missing it. You do not have a bullet point that says looked at tickets, right? Checked ticketing system every day. Am I
I don't
correct?
think.
Now
Yeah.
No, I
And
don't.
you can spin
then that,
that. Good.
okay. Yeah, I mean, you could spin that. I was just saying, like, that isn't the fact that you looked at a ticketing system every day, like, to get behind what you
Hmm.
said earlier, you don't just want tasks. You want to make sure whatever it says there is impactful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you don't want to just list, oh, I check the ticketing system every day. I kept the thing clean. You would want to word it differently, and maybe that's what you're about to say, O'Grady.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was getting into was because obviously a lot of my previous employment was maintaining bug fixes in the ticketing systems, and when that's a big part of your job, you have to obviously put it somehow on here. So the way
Yeah.
that I worded it, and I lost my resume, I need to find it. It's on a thumb drive somewhere. Um, but I went into more about uh, the communication with the customers.
Yeah.
Being able like that many tickets closed is awesome, but to tell that, yeah, like you put the ticketing system numbers, like, oh, I did this many tickets, whatever, but that means nothing to someone who's never used that type of ticketing system. So when you
Right.
put, I worked with hundreds of customers over the course of my time at this place, corrected X amount of hours like you did. I really like putting time savings in resumes because savings in dollars is good. If you can say, oh, I saved the company $50,000, that's cool. But if you can say, I've saved 2 to 3 hours per time, that's going to go until it's no longer used. So
Mm-hmm.
they can put that into monetary value how they want to, the person reading it.
Sure.
So I like to put that kind of stuff. But yeah, when it comes to ticketing system or something, I would focus on the true acts you did while in the ticketing system, as opposed to just saying I did my job. I mean, essentially, I sat at a computer and did ticketing systems. Like that doesn't sound exciting. Or pull out
Right.
some really big tickets that you've done. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you guys have both seen some of the things that came in at tickets that were 2 or 3 week projects. I'm like, this isn't a ticket. This is a new feature. This is a new
Right.
application. This is you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, really focus on those big ticket items that can. In my mind, I like to focus on the time saving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as another kind of an example that's different from saving time, I've got something highlighted here where I was able to modernize an environment. Of course, I didn't do all of those things by myself, but that's not the point. The point is I participated in accomplishing this. And so if I'm
You think that's not on my resume? Come on.
Yeah.
for
Assisted in
sure,
modernizing. That's totally
for
on my.
sure. So it's just a different example
Mhm.
of impact versus, I saved X time every time I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and again, someone
um,
reading this can say, okay, a modernization of a huge part of the industry or a huge part of the company is going to eventually save time and money. Just even if it's, a couple seconds every time you log in, that kind of stuff adds up, to a huge degree. Which I
yeah,
know
for
this was
sure.
more than just taking a couple seconds off, but
Yeah, I know. But, if you had things like, uh, Anthony, you mentioned access earlier. So let's say I'm trying to think of things that other people who've been in here before might do. Um, you know, if you improved an accounting process somehow. So I know we have somebody. Is it Spirit? I think works with accounting. Is that right? Um, somebody in here works with that frequents us, works in accounting or does something with accounting work. So if you improve a process, to me that's still you're modernizing it in some way. You're making it better than it was before. Then figure that out. Try to put numbers on that. How'd you modernize it? In what ways did it
Yep.
change?
Yep.
Not
And
just go ahead.
okay, and if that sounds difficult, like looking back and finding the numbers and figuring out how much of impact that has. I'd like to challenge you from now on when you work on these projects, make that part of you getting your job done. So, Grady, when when you did a big task today, um, or if you do a big 3-week project, think about these bullet points then. Not
Yep.
because you're looking for another job, because when you talk to your boss once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year, um, being able to say I did a thing and this is how much it saved the company, not
Yeah.
only helps you but helps your boss, your manager, your supervisor, whatever wording you like,
Mhm.
talk to their boss and be like, "Well, great is a great guy, but more importantly, this is how much money saved the company," right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
think
Give
about
them
those
the
things
ammunition.
while you're going. What's
Mhm.
that? Yeah, yeah, 100%. Because if your manager likes you, if the person above you likes you, they want to keep you around. They want to go to bat for you.
Yep.
Give them that ammunition. And then if you are looking for another job at some point for whatever reason, you're moving to Maui, then you have that bullet points for that too.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
discussed what makes a good manager, and obviously, someone that's going to go to bat for you is someone you want above you. But yeah, you have to give them like I guess ammunition, but something to bring to the fight, because they might really know that you're good at your job, but if they have no solid proof, it doesn't look really good when they're trying to help you get a raise or a promotion. So
Right. Yeah. So this brings me. This made me think about something that I actually haven't done in my current role. I'm not entirely sure why. I have a theory, but I'm not going to talk about that now. In previous places, especially early in my career, when I would start a new job, I would the first few days I was there, open up Word, and I would create a Word doc just called accomplishments.
mhm.
And I would start right away with filling that thing in with stuff I've done that has some sort of impact.
good idea.
And you can use that, in conversations where people are concerned about whether you're actually making an impact. You
Yeah.
pull out that document, you say, well, this is actually all the things I've done over the first 60 days or whatever long it happens to be. And a lot of that stuff is transferable to your resume, and it
Yep.
helps you build a resume for that particular job. So
You can also preach it to the person you see in the mirror every day whenever that person feels like they're not making an impact. And you can open up your list
yeah.
and be like, actually, you're doing pretty good.
You're not
Help
wrong.
clear some of that imposter syndrome out.
Yeah.
I
Sometimes
like
you don't
it.
realize how much. Yeah. Sometimes you don't realize how much you're doing because you're just
Mm-hmm.
working day to day and getting stuff done. Yeah.
Yep.
Having that chat with yourself is probably a good thing, for sure.
So here's the next job. I was at Cries Health, role and stuff I did.
Read
Um,
read Craftsman's response. That's all. That's a perfect example of something that should go in a resume. I laugh because I
I
was.
wish I could see chat.
Oh, I will read it. So he said there's something he put on his resume. Implemented and trained team members on testing practices and object-oriented development approaches, resulting in reducing the team's monthly error rate from greater than 35,000 errors down to less than 300.
wow. That's a
It
great.
sounds made up, but like I think it was there.
Oh, was that when you left? Oh no, too soon.
Oh.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. Uh,
No, I don't
so
know if that was, but just that's funny.
That wasn't.
No, I'm sorry, not when I left. But I don't know
No.
if it's even the same.
No,
Place,
it's
but-
probably not, but it's all good fun.
Continue, Lee.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's totally fine. We're all good. So here's my next role: Creep Core, Horizon Health, and just database administrator there. This was like a year and a half. So boy, I have some stories to tell about why these get shorter. So remind me to do that.
Okay.
But I've got a few bullet points on here about stuff I did. Some of this is tasks. Some of it is accomplishments. Like the first thing is an accomplishment. This is something I did while I was there at Horizon, and again, kind of a list of skills in here. Where did my mouse go? With this bullet point, this is an activity or a task I did, but it also lists important software
Mm-hmm.
and stuff that actually isn't in my skills up at the top is in here. So idea a SQL Diagnostic Manager. Well, if somebody uses that at their place and it's in here, then that's a positive for Lee when the resume is being reviewed pre-interview time.
Mhm.
So just because you maybe don't have a skills list, or you don't have, again, you can't, a lot of people who've been in the business 5-10 plus years, you can't put every skill or piece of software that you've worked on in a skills list.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. I didn't realize you
then
were in Spec Ops at Mortgage Returns with Ellie Mae.
yeah, well, about that.
DevOps
So
specialist. That makes you in Spec Ops.
I was really a DBA slash sysadmin at this role, but that was my official title, so that's why it's on the resume.
Yeah.
So these places, I had unfortunate things happen that were beyond my control at Mortgage Returns and at Horizon. I liked both of them, and I really wanted to stay at both of those jobs, but just not something that really worked out. It's just like a year and a half, and then not quite 2 years. Yeah, about a year and a half at each place. I don't really like that. I mean, a year and a half's not bad. It's just not as long as I wanted it to be.
Now that's also 6 years ago. So do you have? I think we did discuss this last week on how far back you should go on your
Mhm.
on your working work history.
Yeah.
I think we discussed that we should go as far back as is relevant.
Mhm.
So would you suggest, let's say you're leaving a place that something didn't go right, or you left on bad terms, or it just wasn't a job that, like, you may have been a DBA there, but maybe it's
Mhm.
just not productive enough to list. Would you still recommend leaving a company off that you were a DBA at if you have nothing to put for it? Or would you say just put it anywhere with nothing underneath it?
Super
Man,
interesting.
if I have no bullet points at all, I mean, I'm thinking I wasn't there very long if I have no bullet
Yeah.
points at all.
Were you
That's
there
true.
for 7 days? You know what I mean? Like, if you
Yep.
were there for 6 weeks to 6 months,
That's true. You
you
should be
either have a bullet
implementing.
point or you have a
Yeah.
really interesting story to tell.
You should be somehow involved in something that happened that could be a bullet point. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even if it's just learned new ticketing software called blah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you learned
it's
something
true.
while you're at this place.
And again, this does get into things that we that would be more in the interview process. You know, they may bring up questions in the interview process, saying why doesn't this have a bullet point, or why were you only here a year?
Right.
But I mean, honestly, I think most of us have solid answers for anytime we leave somewhere. It's not like we just were like, nah, I didn't want money anymore, so
I mean,
I
good.
didn't care
I
about
mean,
eating.
Yeah.
sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes you're
Yeah.
not compatible, right? So if
Yeah.
you have a bunch of 2-year employments and one of them, I realize it's 6 weeks. That's really short. Why was it 6 weeks? Because they told me it was going to be X.
Yeah.
I got hired. I found out it was not X. They seem great, but I'm not interested in doing Y. So I bowed out, right? I'm not wasting their time anymore. Or like I said, maybe you really didn't get along with the person above you, or with a coworker, or is toxic. You don't want to
Yeah.
throw somebody under the bus. You don't want to
Right.
well, maybe you do. I don't know, but you could usually when you have a conversation with somebody, and they have a decent spread of, like in this case, 2 years all over the place. If there
Mhm.
was a place you're there for only 6 or 7 weeks, there's probably a story.
Yeah.
You tell that story, and people can suss out what's going on, right? So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that might even bring up, a good point for the interviewer, that if you're there and you say it wasn't a good fit, it wasn't what I was expecting, it wasn't what was described to me as the job. Well, that interviewer is going to be like, all right, or at least a decent interviewer would say he knows his worth. He knows what he wants in an IT career. He has targeted um, focus on what he wants. So let's make sure that this job is what you're looking for, and get it going instead of trying to blow some smoke about what the real job
it gives
is.
you things to talk about,
Yeah.
right? Which is a big, like, I think we've kind of touched on it. I can't remember if we actually like really nailed it down. The resume isn't just for getting an interview. The
Mm-mm.
resume really helps with conversations with the interviewer, interviewee.
Yeah.
Like, I really do look at the resume and ask questions about it when I talk to somebody. It gives me things to talk about. Like, oh, you were here, you were there. That's really interesting. What'd you do there?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the job was boring, but I solved some interesting problems. But mostly, it was boring. Okay, you can
Mm-hmm.
you can get them talking.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as you're not throwing other previous companies under the bus during an interview. Never do that, by the way.
Yeah, I never do that. So I think Craftsman has an interesting comment out there. Can you pull that in?
Doesn't sound like him, but I can read it. I've known several developers that were hired at places, and the workplace completely outright lied about the environment and or the job, and they worked there less than 2 weeks. Yeah. And if someone came to me with that on their resume, I'm like, why were you there 2 weeks? They'd be like, they lied to me, and I would put it in a professional manner of it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what the job described, and I honestly that would be a blowover question. Then I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Next, like,
It's not always lies. Like, I think both of us kind of use that scenario already.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes I know someone who got hired on somewhere, and the two people who ran this area both left. One
Yeah.
of them left within a week of the person starting for reasons, and that person was like, I am adrift in this, and they actually did try, and they only
Mm-hmm.
lasted a few months.
Yeah.
They now that's a story they have to tell. They're like, I gave it a shot, but I was a
Yeah.
junior, and those the two people who were supposed to be running that department left.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yep. And I mentioned this last week, but some of this conversation is reminding me of this. Please don't lie on your resume. If it's on there, you could get a question about it. And you might be able to fake your way through a question on an interview. But if you actually then get the job and
Yeah.
you've lied about a skill and you need that skill with this job, it's not going to take them long to figure out that you lied.
No.
So don't list something if you don't have experience with it. It's really pretty easy to follow
Or
that.
or lists, like, let's say you've worked with something and you're not like an expert at it. You can list it, and when it comes up, you'd be like, yeah, I have touched that. I have worked in it. I'm not, you know, subject matter expert on it, but it is
Yeah.
technology that I've touched. Be honest about anything you put on there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, when there's something like that that I've just kind of dabbled in, I usually say familiarity with whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
definitely list those.
yeah. We keep going back. So here was Scottrade and SQL Server Database Administrator, and it was a contract to hire role, and I opted not for the hire part. I wanted something else. So as we're getting into these later roles, you see I don't have any details. And this is kind of recent. I mean, this is 5 or 6 years ago now. But part of that is that this is a 2-page resume. So my 3-page resume that I told you all about last week has details for Mortgage Returns Ellie Mae, and I think a few bullet points for Scottrade as well. And that's why it's 3 pages, because I have a lot of stuff in here. And early on in my career, Mortgage Returns Ellie Mae was pretty early for the IT part of my career.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of stuff in there because I was trying to show like things I was even just familiar with that I kind of had dabbled in, so to speak, so people could see like a range of skills or range of things that I had done to try to help move me forward. So I had a whole list in there of things that were related to like system administration, for example, even though um, that's not the kind of job I was necessarily going for in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted it on there so people could see, oh, he can learn this. He did these things that weren't necessarily directly related to his job. And I think those kinds of things to me are valuable on the resume as well.
Yeah. I agree. 100%. Sorry, I'm also doing side things related to stream.
All right. So I'm going to keep moving down. So here I have interface security, and I have, I only have 3 roles here, but you can see in this part that I was there a long time. I listed the things that were relevant for an IT job. I actually had 3 roles before the data entry job, but they're not on here because they're not relevant to a job in IT. And of course, when I had fewer jobs, these had bullet points on them, but the same rule kind of applied. And I tried to put on there not just tasks, but things that I accomplished while I was there, projects I finished, or, a difference that I made, so to speak, in that particular role. I wasn't as good at doing that here because I was just starting out in IT and I didn't really know to do that. So my early
Oh, that's fair.
resumes
Yeah.
down here, they do kind of focus more on tasks. Because of that part, I was trying to prove I had some skills.
Yeah. No, and that's like we said. I think earlier in your IT career, you can, list some stuff that may not be hard hitters. You can list tasks you do. You can list Microsoft Office. Something that is a lower level IT desire. But it's all about getting your foot in the door at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about having an education section, and I'm not going to show the rest of it because I just realized that this is not the thing that I edited. Not that I have anything to hide, but um,
Nope, that's
we'll
fine.
talk through the rest of it. So education, I just have.
We can go back to 3 screen if you want.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So in the education part, I have the so I have a master's degree and I also have a bachelor's degree. Neither one of those things has anything to do with what I do right now.
Yep.
Which is both unfortunate, but I've also realized not particularly uncommon either.
We can go on a tangent on that.
Yeah.
Your master's degree in mixology comes in handy sometimes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. So something we talked about with the education section is whether you should put your graduation dates on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we kind of landed on it depends on kind of where you are in your career and how you feel about concerns about ageism, for example.
I would not put it on if you're trying to get your foot in the door of IT. I mean, it sucks, but that's just the facts of it. Is if I see a resume that is already kind of light, and then you also see that that person's just got out of high school. Legally, yeah, nothing that could be changed different. But implicit biases say that it's very likely that someone can look at that and be like, I don't want to have to train someone right away.
Sure.
Because they might be thinking, he just got out of high school, he doesn't know anything. When in reality, he might be a 10 times better developer than the person hiring him. But, it can definitely put in some biases that we don't want.
Yeah. Sometimes the opposite happens, though. So sometimes if you're honest and you say, I just finished school less than 6 months ago, and then you set that expectation so people realize that, and then during the interview or during the pre-screening call, you talk about all the stuff you've already done, what you already know, it could be more impressive. Like, I got people who are coming from another software job, and you've just learned so much on your own. You've done X and Y, and you have an open source project. I don't know, but like there's things that you can say that, and you can to show that you're hungry and you wanted to get into this, and you've really doubled down, and people can get a sense of that. They wouldn't if you lied or left out the fact that we're out of school. We're just out of school. So
that's true.
And I think that's where impact projects make a difference there. Like if you can demonstrate things that you did, maybe you are fresh out of high school and you're trying to get a junior developer role.
Mm-hmm.
But in high school, either maybe you took some classes that were relevant. I mean, that's a thing these days. That wasn't a thing for me. But maybe you took some relevant classes. List them. Don't just put graduated from Jim Bob High School. What'd you take at Jim Bob High School that makes it possible for you to apply for a junior dev role? And then what'd you do with that? I mean, you could have done some really impressive, cool side projects that, allowed you to use things you learned in high school to build some interesting things. List that as part of your resume. So,
yeah, I'm amazed by technology in schools nowadays. Having a son at 4th grade, they're already doing programming classes, and
nice.
I can have a whole week on why, and this may be a controversial take, why I don't agree that kids should be learning programming. But
I'll be fine. Let's do it.
I can do it. It's there's a lot of programming things that require real world knowledge for you to be good at it. Kids don't have that yet, and they won't develop it if they know the rules first. But I'll get into that another week because I can literally just continue for an hour about it. But
Yeah, no problem. So I wouldn't, and I wouldn't be concerned talking about education if your education doesn't connect to your the jobs that you're pursuing. It's not that uncommon. I think the most important thing is that your potential employers see that you have some education that you completed.
Mhm.
Even if it's high school and you're pursuing an associate's, you don't even have an associate's yet. Or maybe you're just out of high school, you don't plan to look for an associate's because you know more school's not for you. That's okay too.
Yep.
We talked a little bit about what do you do in that case. But for a lot of people who have education, you know, maybe your bachelor's is in you know English because you thought you were going to be an English major, and
Yep.
and now you're looking to be a scrum master or project manager, or you want to be a developer or whatever. That's okay. I think the fact that you finished something is what people are
Yeah.
interested in.
That's what I always
Yeah.
look at is if you can accomplish and stick with something like an education. I don't care if it's in, liberal arts or whatever they are. It's you took 4 years, you dedicated something, you made a choice and you stuck with it. That says something about you as a person, in my opinion. So that's the way
Right.
I look
Yeah.
at it. I don't,
If you got your PhD in
Yeah.
dance, we'll at least have something interesting to talk about.
right? We'll have a dance battle. No,
Oh, a dance off like in
dance off.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
yes, Guardians of the Galaxy. Thank you. So we have two more sections.
Okay.
Talk about training and certifications. Training is that third party thing you might have done on your own. Maybe like for me, I went to a continuing education and training center here that's local to where the three of us live. And I got a certificate in database technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's not going to college. It's not the same thing. I went to classes, they were either 1 or 2 day classes. We sat in a room. We worked through some technology pieces in those classes. And then we had quizzes or skill tests, you might say,
Okay.
where maybe we would talk about transactional replication for SQL Server. And then the skills test would be, it's not really a test, but the skills section would be, set up transactional replication between this and this.
Yeah.
And we would work through that. And the person doing the class would walk around and make sure that people who were stuck got help and that sort of thing. That advanced my career so quickly because I got a lot of information in a short amount of time. And I
Yep.
got to walk away with the books and my notes and all of that kind of stuff too.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of stuff that goes into training.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. We did, agile training. I think you can put that you've been through agile training, but then so the next part you said is the certs that you're getting into.
Yeah, certifications.
So
So
like
I
with
have
agile,
3.
would you have like the training in the section of agile training and then the certs you received after it, or would you want to group that stuff together? Or just
Mm,
training in general? Not, I mean, it doesn't have to be agile, but would you want to somehow associate the fact that what you did in your training is what led to this cert?
you could list them in. That's a great question. I didn't. So, for example, my training section and cert sections are not necessarily related. I mean, you could look at what's in them
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, these. You could definitely draw a correlation between the certificate at the training center based on the date of May 2012 to a year later a year later, my first certification as a technology specialist in SQL Server 2008. I mean, the thing in May of 2012 led to the thing in May of 2013.
Yeah.
There's an obvious connection there. It might not always be obvious, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's a good food for thought idea on, what do you do with that information? I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule, but I like the question.
So
Sure.
then, for the certifications, so the other question I had about that was most certifications you get like a physical certification label. You've seen those on emails and on, you get the right to use that label. Would you want to put those on a resume? Like the seals that you get at the bottom, or the seals that you get and put them at the bottom? Or would you rather list your certifications and dates they were achieved?
So I don't think that I would put the seals there because they would take up a lot of room. Most of the ones that I'm familiar with now have ways for you to share them.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if I needed to prove to an employer that I actually got the cert,
Yeah.
I can share that information somehow through whatever container it is that's holding that cert information. And a lot of times you can download the certification.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done that. I have them downloaded. If somebody needed me to prove it, I would probably just email the downloaded cert for them because that has things like the certification number and other things on it that they could then verify through Microsoft or from wherever.
I'll also was curious about expired certs. Some certs have to be renewed on yearly, biannually, different rates. Some are forever, but do you put expired certs on there saying you achieved it? And how would you like identify that it's no longer active if you did put it on there? I'm bringing out all the hard questions, all right? We're doing it.
Yeah, I have a thought. But Anthony, do you want to take a stab at that question?
Can you ask one more time? Because I was busy being excited that I'm in the chat again.
I saw that. So with this, let's say you got a cert. It doesn't really matter what cert, just a cert that needs to be, re-updated yearly, annually, or biannually, whatever it is. Would you put an expired cert? If you earn that cert, is it still worth going on your resume, even though you let it lapse?
Okay, so my first reaction is the obvious one. It depends. So let's say you're a DBA and you were certified in a cert that, probably is only valid for SQL Server up to 2012 or even 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you were cooking back then. So, in a lot of situations, I would say yes, right?
Well, and in that case, they might still be using that SQL Server instance as well, right?
100%.
So,
and if we talk about developers, you have a certification that shows you were doing C# when it was back in its infancy, right? There's probably code out there that someone's calling legacy. That if we're talking about resume here, you're looking for a job. Someone might go, hey, Angular 6 versus Angular 2. Drastic differences there.
This is Angular JS.
Huge. Yeah, there's huge differences, right?
Yeah.
So if you have something old in your environment, that's actually arguably very useful.
Yeah.
The other side of it depends. If you're tired of working on old stuff, you've been doing brownfield stuff, you liked it, but you're just done now. You don't want to just open support tickets on, Delphi. Then you might not list that. You might just list your recent ones because you want people to notice that you are doing the new whiz-bang thing. You love Rust now and whatnot. So what you're looking for, if you're looking for just a good job where you can do some hard dev work, maybe listing that old stuff isn't bad. If you're looking for new stuff, list the new stuff.
And that's the point I wanted get to, was that make sure you're focusing your resume based on what you want to do. If you put old stuff, there's a lot. Let's say me putting AS400, I put it on there as a talking point, as in I don't plan on doing that, but it's something to show that I've done it. Now, if I had a certain AS400, I would not put that on there because I don't want to be pigeonholed into you're the AS400 guy or you're the
Right.
whatever it is. I purposely leave off what was the one that the app that controls QuickBooks. So QuickBooks, I'm decently good at QuickBooks in a programming stance, not from using it, but in a API stance. And yeah, I'm never touching that again, so it's never going on my resume again. So
I know what app you're talking about, and I'll pretend to forget that it exists too.
yeah, so much so that I struck it off my resume.
Yeah. There is so Craftsman made me think of something when he talked about how he was getting hits from folks asking him, "Hey, do you want to do this job? Because I see it's on your resume."
Mm-hmm.
So there's a piece of software called Vormetric that I encountered at one of my older jobs and had to learn it. I didn't particularly care for it. It wasn't very user friendly.
Yeah.
But it was pretty early in my career. So I was still trying to establish that I know something.
Yeah.
So I had it listed, and 2 or 3 jobs later, it's still in my resume, and I would get emails from recruiters looking for someone who used the software. So I
Yeah.
took it off the resume. I did what you did. I just took it off. I'm like, I don't need that to be on there anymore. So I just got rid of it.
Unless you're looking for a job that wants that, then yeah, you throw it back on there. But
Sure.
I guess it's just those resume skimmer applications that say, hey, pull out every resume that has this word in it. Hey, look, you're in there. And then they look at the rest of your resume and they're like, yeah, let's call this guy. And you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, why'd I put it on there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can make a living doing specialty software or supporting legacy stuff that it's not going to go away. Like there are people, there are companies that are still running important applications on very old SQL servers.
Worked there at least
And
5 years.
yeah. So if you look at things like the cloud, for example, and you're like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want to do that. That's okay.
Yep.
Because depending on what your current skill set is, you're going to be fine to do legacy stuff for 5, 10, 15 years. I
Yep.
mean, there's still people out there doing things with old programming languages, and you could probably in the right scenario make a ton of money because you're one of the last 10 people who know something about that platform.
It's true. A lot of big companies, and I can speak firsthand. A lot of big banks still have software, still have programs running on mainframes, running on COBOL. Right? I mean, my current employer still has an AS400 team, so that stuff's still out there.
Oh yeah.
So if you have legacy knowledge and you like that, I should even call it legacy if it's still holding up businesses, right?
I'd say it's still probably the majority of big businesses is what a lot of developers would call legacy code. It's just
Yeah.
it's very difficult to replace it all. So you're pretty much always going to have it. If it was written at some point, they'll slowly creep up the years to keep it kind of relevant, but there's still major systems that just can't be updated to 20 years new system. It's like, well, that's a big gap.
Your bank probably has COBOL systems, right? Fortran,
Mhm.
all that stuff. Big insurance companies. we use legacy as almost derogatory term
Yeah.
sometime, and I almost think we shouldn't.
No, it
It's
definitely
all good
should not be.
fun. We like our new toys, but we probably shouldn't. A lot of time that is what I like to call load bearing code.
Mhm.
It's doing its job and it's important. So,
And
oh
it's
my gosh,
legacy
U.S.
because
missile
it's
defense
worked for so
systems.
long.
That's true. It's legacy because it's still working, and
Yeah.
people are scared to get rid of it because it's done its job. Like
Yeah.
Craftsman's talking about in the chat, U.S. missile defense systems still run 8-inch floppy disks.
I will say that
I
pretty
feel
much
a bit panicked right now.
anything military related is at least running on 1980 software. It's very anytime you hear
Interesting.
military grade, just don't buy it. People are always like, "Oh, it's military grade." Yeah, that means it's the worst. Like, don't buy it. Go for something better.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
yeah. But that being said,
And
Well,
with
you
that
heard it
note,
from him.
O'Grady will have the FBI at his door soon.
I got plenty of other reasons.
Oh my gosh.
I'm on so many lists. Whatever.
So that rounds out the resume talk, at least in terms of the sections that we've already talked about, what to put on it,
hmm
and that sort of stuff. I mean, do either one of you have any additional wrap up kind of thoughts or any other paths we want to go down?
I was curious what your thought would be, and this was something that just popped in my head when I was just cleaning the other night. But it was so we look at resumes, we see a traditional format that our eye is kind of used to seeing. We see this kind of white paper with bullet points, dates, whatever. What would be your thought? And it may be completely insane. I'm thinking if I got a resume, I would love it. But if someone did a resume that was very out of the ordinary, like not just like, oh, we moved some bullet points around, or oh, we have a header or a sidebar on, and a picture on top, but like if someone presented you with a D&D character sheet that was a resume, how would you take that? Would you think that they was not taking their job serious enough, or would you say that based on what's on the resume, obviously, let's say it's a perfect skill sets, so two people, perfect skill sets, one turns into a D&D character sheet that has all of their skill sets listed, one turns into a white page with bullet points like traditional. What would you compare those two, and how would you feel about each?
Interesting.
If someone brought it to me, I would be freaking excited. So I don't know if
Yeah.
it depends, but
Yeah, go first,
Yeah.
Lee.
I've been talking a lot. You go, Anthony.
Oh, okay.
he's
So
like, I didn't have an answer.
no, I do. I
Oh.
I was deliberate when I said Lee go first. So the I feel like it's a trick question. So if literally they've made it through HR, I get to talk to the person, and that resume got through, I would lean towards what O'Grady's saying. Like, if you theme it up and you make it look good, I would kind of get excited too. Like we made a comment about O'Grady's LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love that. If I was interviewing O'Grady, because I need a personal bodyguard, and I
Yep.
read his LinkedIn profile, I'll be like, this is cool. His personality is being exuded there, and I think it's okay for LinkedIn. But here's why I think it's a trick question. If my son, who I would always tell him to, be yourself, yada yada yada, want to do that on a resume, I'd be like, you have to be careful. Because if it doesn't get past HR, if it doesn't get past a recruiter, if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
make it to my desk, then it doesn't matter whether or not I'm going to be like, oh, there's puppies all over it. It won't matter.
True.
So
Yeah.
you've got to get to the person. Now, if it's important to you to have a fun resume because you're hoping that it'll resonate with the right person and scare away the
Mm-hmm.
wrong person, because that's the thing,
Mm-hmm.
you use a real businessy email, and as soon as you have the contact information of the person you're going to talk to next Thursday, then you send them, you say, hey, I want to give you a little bit more detailed resume. Can I give you that? And you send it to them.
Yep.
And then you can have it have military jargon or nerddom, or if you're really into sports, go birds, or college football references. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Like,
Hmm.
for the person interviewing, we care about skill set. The interesting
Skill
one won't
set
actually probably.
and a good fit. That's where I
Yeah.
think that this helps with the good fit part. If there's two skill sets the same, so I like that. Like you said that though, about talking, you're allowed to talk to them. Like, if you can find out who's going to interview you, there's no rule saying you can't email them. Be like, hey, you're going to interview me coming up. Here's some little more about me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a DBA who's starting soon, and me and my counterpart are already having conversations with this person. So, and they haven't started yet or anything. But that's they emailed us and they're starting, so we're having conversations, right? So that kind of thing happens.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about using it as a way to weed out who you do and don't want to work for, but I guess it could be. So if you're a really free spirit creative type, um, you probably don't want a boss who is the opposite of that.
Yep.
And who would be turned off by your creativity and your free spirit kind of way about you. So that could the flowery or what I'm looking for, the more interesting resume could be a way of weeding out those people that you probably don't want to work for anyway.
Yep.
But again, we're talking about IT too. Like, I'll be very specific to people listening. If you're
Yes.
listening and you're in a different field, it can be completely different. As O'Grady said about hairstyling, or if you're going into marketing or graphic design. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
graphic designers probably have the most awesome resume fodder, right?
Probably true. Yeah.
But for IT,
Yeah.
to get to the person you need to talk to, you might not personalize it too much, is what I'm kind of
Yeah.
saying.
Or to Lee's point as well, or to both your points of weeding out the people you don't want to work for. I don't know, if it doesn't make it through HR, do you want to work at that company?
If you're junior, probably yes.
If you're a junior, no, okay, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm speaking. If don't do this if you're a junior. Don't do it. Just don't do it. You won't get your foot in IT. Don't do it.
Yeah. Remember, we're not
I'm
just
discussing
talking about
as a 10-year change of job. Like, I'm at my 15th year of development. I'm like, I'm going to a new place. I wonder if I sent out a bunch of these, to companies you want to work for, obviously, but sent them these resumes. One might stick, and that company may surprise you that their culture fits what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And at least can give you maybe more an insight to look into that type of company. My company's all about culture. I freaking love the place I work, and that's a huge part of it. I'm going to ask my boss tomorrow, what would he do if he got one of those?
Yeah, it'd be a good question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, my company is hiring. I'm going to be talking to a lot of people soon. And if one of y'all send me a resume, get it to me somehow, and there's like a puzzle in there, a little something that I have to figure out, a little Easter egg, I wouldn't be mad. I don't care, but you got to get
Zodiac
past
signs
HR.
on the Zodiac killer signs on the back of his resume.
Well, don't necessarily make me think that like I'm going to summon some evil spirit or something. But you don't want to scare me. Don't leave a note on my desk. This isn't for a security ops team, so
someone leaves a note on your desk that says you're interviewing me tomorrow. Here's a thumb drive with my resume. It's like, what?
Oh wow.
What?
I passed the test because I don't use the USB. So
that's the test. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I might reach for the nearest hammer if that were my case. But
I'd be like, I'm out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yes. Again, side note, don't do this if you're trying to get into IT. This was just a hypothetical question. And then don't blame me if it doesn't work also. So I think I'm covered now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, remember, you're the person that took the risk, regardless of the suggestion.
Yes.
We're not saying that you should do this. It was just a
It was a
interesting
joke. Don't leave
rabbit
notes
to
at people's
chase.
desks.
It's a
Don't
joke
do
that I
it.
may one day do, but it's a different thing. But
Yeah.
I will say why I brought it. Why it did come up was at my company we do. So I want to say this without giving anything away, I guess. But we do every Monday a meeting of our entire teams. So our main group is made up of like 5 or 6 teams. Every Monday we all get together in one big virtual meeting, and then what we've been doing is each team is actually discussing, or I guess presenting themselves. Like, here's who I am. Here's who's on my team. Here's what I like to do in my free time. Just very basic stuff.
Mhm.
We decided this week to do our it's going to be in 2 weeks is our team's turn, and we're doing D&D character cards to describe ourselves
Nice.
and our IT
Interesting.
career. So that being said, I'm like, well, if we can do it there in the company, they love it. Like, I
Yeah.
wonder how they would look at a resume that came in like that. Could they see that as, you know what, this person could be a really good culture fit? Let's see who they
Yeah.
are. So, you
Yeah.
know, food for thought, maybe.
Yeah. I remember, Grady, you showed me a resume from someone who, had a side panel and some interesting decorative kinds of things on part of it. And there were even like some interesting icons to indicate professional work history, education, and some
Yep.
other stuff like that.
Like actual little airplane pictures or education pictures.
Yeah. I would be totally fine with that. It looks interesting. It's not just bullet points on white paper. So
And that was my wife's resume, and I think most of the chat knows that she owns a salon. So that was before she owned the salon, and in the stylist or the cosmetology field, you do have to stick out a little more. There are benefits to being attractive. It's the world we live in. That's biases are there whether we agree to them or not. That being said, she has a picture at the top of the resume of herself. That's standard for her industry. That picture alone gives a lot of information away. So you have to be careful when you do something like that. Just by looking at a picture of someone, you can tell a lot about them. A lot of things about them that you're not allowed to ask in an interview. So, make sure when you're doing
True.
something like that, you're open to talking about whatever you are presenting.
Or you're just open to letting people know something
Yeah.
beforehand. Yeah, I mean, gatekeeping exists, right? So
I think we talked
bad,
about the
we shouldn't
ring,
be doing it.
the wedding ring kind of thing. It's like, if I have a wedding ring on, I'm married. Or you have the high assumption that I'm married. Do you want to go as far to take your wedding ring off for an interview? Probably not. It's maybe you do,
Yeah.
depending on what situation you're in.
Do you want to put one on to throw things off?
I mean,
hey, the whole thing sounds icky though. But yeah,
I think it was Dunce last week that said just put more rings on to disguise them. So you just have like 8 rings. Like, all right, I guess you could be married.
That would be interesting.
Could be married to 8 people. I don't know. I don't ask. You do your thing.
Yeah. Off limits question.
Yeah.
On that note,
I have a really cool person to raid. While you guys want to wrap up. Or
yeah, I can do
up.
some closing thoughts unless you got something, Lee.
Nope, go ahead.
Yeah, so the one of the big takeaways that I want to make sure I get out there is, we joked a little bit about having fun resumes. We joked a lot about all different things, but when it comes down to brass tacks, the resume does 2 things, and it's for 2 people. The 2 things it does is it gets you to the interview. That's why, even though I would love to see a D&D themed resume, you probably don't want to do that. You want to get to talk to me.
Yeah.
And if the second thing it does is it gives me something to talk about. It gives me, a little bit of understanding about what you've been doing, what you are doing, and your trajectory. And then when I'm on the phone or the Zoom chat with you, It gives me an opportunity to go, oh wait, you worked here. What'd you do there? Oh, you touched this technology. How come you were so Oracle before and now you're so SQL Server? You know, that kind of thing.
Like, because I used Oracle.
Because I just couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So the two people that I'm saying it's for. I mean, it's for you, but I'm not talking about you. Who you're making it for?
Mhm.
I like to point out that it's for the person you're interviewing. It's for the hiring manager, but it's also for their boss.
Yeah.
So like if you were interviewing with me, you would want bullet points that talked about technologies you've touched and problems you solved. On Lee's resume, I saw a couple bullet points where it's like, you know, CI/CD pipelines and making multiple environments so developers can get stuff done. All really cool, exciting stuff. He had proof of concept on there more than once, and even though some
Yep.
people might say that's not a thing that got used, I say you were trying interesting things and found out if they fit. You
Yep.
you proofed technology. That's good for me, but my boss in this hypothetical situation might be more interested in the time savings and the getting stuff done and big projects that closed out. I know you ran a big project, so
Mhm.
you kind of are looking at making it to get two people excited about you, the one you're going to talk to and their boss you may or may not talk to. So
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents, 5 cents, $1.50.
I
50
love it.
cent.
It's a good summary.
The that brings up a quick point I have is instead of doing that, and I don't know if we've talked about this at all or not, about having a personal business card not related to your company. Do you guys have one, or do you guys suggest one?
No, is that
So,
like a pickup trick or something?
yes.
Um,
No. So you just make a
No, I do not.
personalized business card that is about you. So when you're talking to people, um, especially if you're at a convention or somewhere that job opportunities are more likely, you don't always want to hand them your current business card with your current business information on it. And you may want to
yeah.
point them more to like a resume type business card. You can have your GitHub on there, or you can do something like the D&D stats. That would be a door opener. If I got someone's business card that said, SQL 10 points, dexterity 0 points. But if we we
Called out.
could, it's fine. But like that, I can see as a door opener better than a resume built that way. So
Yeah, that could be interesting. If you were at a conference, in person and talking
Definitely
to
at a
people,
conference.
um, yeah, that could be interesting, as a way to stay connected to someone.
Mhm.
For sure.
yeah. So we are rating a new channel that is. I was like, do I have a dog? What is going on? It's another podcast. They are called VMware Tanzu, and
Really? Okay, now I'm super interested.
I know you never heard of VMware, but
partners as well.
Never.
So
Right.
the other thing that's awesome.
sorry, I accidentally muted them before a second. So they're talking about VMware, and currently they are talking about Cloud Native Crew pilot. So we're gonna head over there and see what they're about, and maybe learn something. I don't know. I'm gonna see what they have to say. Yeah, so everybody make sure you follow them when we raid. Anybody that's not, make sure you're following us and share the word. We will be back next Thursday.
Yes.
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 I
Next
think it's
Thursday.
the
14th.
following Thursday we may need to talk about because we have some schedule things. But as of right now, next week, not a problem. We'll get that. So, yeah. Anybody else have anything to add?
Nope. I think
don't
next
think
week
so.
is work from home, right?
Is it? Again?
That's
No.
what. Well, I guess we'll see.
We will sort that out. Make sure you check out our
All right.
Discord and our Twitters and the Twitterverse. And then you can, if you are Anthony, make sure you check out our Twitch.
Yes.
All right. We are going to raid. I am O'Grady, Anthony, and Lee. See you
See
guys
you
later.
later.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.